Right now, tonight, you're going to feel it. Maybe it's the moment you turn off the lights. Something about the dark feels wrong. Maybe it's that thought that crawls in at 2 a.m. The one about someone you lost, someone who isn't coming back. Maybe it's the low hum of dread when you watch the news. Everything feels like it's coming apart at the seams. You probably think those fears are yours. Personal. Specific to you. Your life. Your century. They're not. Here's what almost nobody talks about. Researchers have spent decades studying ancient civilizations on every continent. Cultures that had zero contact with each other, separated by thousands of miles and thousands of years. The Egyptians, the Maya, the Sumerians, the Greeks, the Vikings, the Aztecs. These people shared no language, no trade routes, no written communication. They couldn't have copied each other, and yet when scientists looked at their myths, their rituals, their temple carvings, and their burial sites, they found something that stopped them cold. The fears were identical, not similar, not in the same ballpark. Identical. The same monsters lived in the dark. The same dread surrounded the dead. The same terror gripped people when they felt the world's order starting to crack. Different names, different gods, different continents. Same nightmare. Most people assume ancient fears were primitive. Superstition, the result of ignorance. We look back at someone sacrificing to a sun god and think, they just didn't understand astronomy yet. That explanation is wrong. And the real one is far stranger. Because these weren't random fears that different cultures happened to share. They were the same fear, running on the same hardware, the human brain, expressing itself through whatever language and symbols each culture had available at the time. The ancient Egyptians weren't afraid of the dark because they were primitive. They were afraid of the dark for the exact same reason you are. The same reason every human being who has ever lived has been afraid of it. It's not superstition, it's not religion, it's not culture, it's biology. Ancient, ruthless, and still running inside you right now. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly what those three fears are, where they came from, and why no civilization, including ours, has ever been able to escape them. Let's start with the oldest one, darkness. Every major civilization in human history built an entire mythology around what lived in the dark. The Egyptians called it Apep, a serpent so enormous it swallowed the sun every night. Their priests performed rituals every single evening to make sure it rose again in the morning, not as a metaphor, as a genuine, terrifying possibility that tomorrow might not come. The Mesopotamians had Lamashtu, a demon that crept into homes after sunset to strangle children in their sleep. The ancient Greeks feared Nyx, the goddess of night, so much that even Zeus himself refused to cross her. In Japan, the yokai, spirits of darkness, were not fairy tales. They were documented threats with specific rules for how to survive them. Different names, different monsters, same fear, and here's why. For 99% of human evolutionary history, darkness meant death. Leopards hunt at night. Hyenas hunt at night. Every apex predator that ever threatened early humans operated in the dark. Your ancestors who weren't afraid of the dark didn't survive to become your ancestors. The ones who were, did. That fear wasn't irrational. It was the reason your bloodline still exists. The second fear is harder to talk about. The dead who won't stay dead. Every civilization on Earth, without exception, developed elaborate rituals to manage this fear. The Egyptians spent more resources on their dead than on the living. The Romans had the Lemuria festival, 3 nights a year dedicated to appeasing restless spirits. Chinese ancestor worship going back 3,500 years. The Aztec Day of the Dead. The Viking belief that the dishonored dead walked again as Draugr. Why does this keep appearing everywhere? Neuroscientists at Cornell discovered that when someone close to you dies, your brain doesn't simply stop modeling them. It keeps running simulations, their voice, their face, what they might say, for months, sometimes years. The ghost isn't out there. It's in your neural architecture. Every culture built ritual around that experience, because the experience itself is universal. The third fear is the strangest of all, the end of order. Not death, not darkness. Something worse, the collapse of meaning itself. The Vikings called it Ragnarok, the Hindus, Kali Yuga. The Maya tracked it with mathematical precision across centuries. They weren't predicting the weather. They were expressing something the human mind cannot stop feeling, that everything holding the world together is temporary, fragile, and one wrong move from falling apart. Here's where it gets strange. For a long time, historians assumed these shared fears were a coincidence, or trade, or some forgotten cultural exchange we haven't uncovered yet. A borrowed myth, a traveling story, an idea that spread along ancient trade routes. Then neuroscience showed up, and it killed that theory completely. In 1996, psychologist Paul Ekman and his team traveled to 6 isolated cultures across 4 continents, groups with no meaningful contact with the outside world. They showed each group the same images: darkness, decay, structural collapse, things falling apart. They measured heart rate, skin conductance, pupil dilation. The physiological responses were identical, not similar, identical. It wasn't the stories that were the same, it was the body's reaction before the story even began, before language, before culture, before religion. The fear was already there, sitting in the hardware. Here's why. Deep inside your brain sits a structure called the amygdala. It formed roughly 200 million years ago, long before humans, long before mammals as we know them. Its entire job is to detect threats and trigger a survival response before your conscious mind has time to think. It doesn't read books. It doesn't learn culture. It runs on one thing: pattern recognition built by millions of years of what killed your ancestors and what didn't. Darkness killed your ancestors. The amygdala flagged darkness as a threat. That flag never got removed. The dead who returned, meaning social bonds that broke, hierarchies that collapsed, group cohesion that unraveled, destroyed entire early human groups. The amygdala flagged that too. And chaos, the collapse of predictable order. An environment where the rules stopped working meant your food source disappeared, your shelter failed, your group scattered. It was a death sentence, so your brain learned to treat disorder itself as an existential threat. This is the part most people never consider. Religion didn't create these fears. Religion was built to manage them. Every great civilization that ever existed looked at these three raw: biological terrors, darkness, the restless dead, the collapse of order, and did the same thing. They wrapped them in story. They gave them names. They built temples and rituals and priesthoods specifically designed to hold these fears at a manageable distance. The pyramids aren't a mystery. They're an engineering solution to a psychological problem that every human being on Earth shares. The fear came first. The civilization came second. We like to think we've moved past this. We have electricity. We have science. We have a rational explanation for everything that used to terrify our ancestors. We don't sacrifice animals to make the sun rise. We don't leave food outside for the dead. We don't build temples to hold back chaos. We tell ourselves we outgrew the fear. We didn't. We just gave it a new wardrobe. Think about what you actually do at night. You don't sleep in full darkness, although almost nobody does anymore. There's a phone screen, a hallway light, a television left on in the background. The blue light flooding your retina at midnight tells your amygdala the same thing a campfire told your ancestors. Stay alert, something might be out there. Sleep scientists call it chronic hyperarousal. Your great-grandmother would have called it being haunted. Think about grief. Modern psychology now knows that after losing someone close, the human brain continues generating simulations of that person for months, sometimes years. Their voice, the way they moved, what they would have said. We call this the grieving process. We medicate it, therapize it, try to move through it on a schedule. Ancient civilizations built entire ritual calendars around it because they understood something we've mostly forgotten: that the dead don't simply leave. Not from the brain that loved them. The ghost was never supernatural. It was always neurological and chaos. Look at your news consumption. The average American checks the news 14 times a day. Not because they expect good news. Because the amygdala cannot stop scanning for signs that the order is cracking. That the systems holding everything together are about to fail. Anxiety disorders are now the most common mental health condition in the United States. We don't have a word for what the ancient world called the fear of Ragnarok, so we call it doom scrolling and treat it like a bad habit. It isn't a bad habit, it's a 200 million year old survival mechanism running in a world it was never built for. Here's the uncomfortable truth at the center of all of this. The pharaoh watching the sun go down felt what you feel at 2 a.m. when your mind won't stop. The Viking chieftain staring at the horizon felt what you feel reading the news. The Aztec priest performing rituals at midnight felt what you feel when someone you love is gone and the silence in the house is unbearable. Same fear, same brain, 30,000 years apart. You are not more rational than they were. You are not less afraid. You are running the exact same program on newer hardware in a world that has no idea what to do with it. So the question isn't why ancient civilizations feared the dark, the dead, and the end of order. The question is, what does it mean that we still do? And we've built an entire modern world pretending otherwise.